Welcome to episode 69 of Beyond Distribution. Today's episode was recorded live at the February GTDC Summit North America and features a true view from the top of the channel. GTDC CEO Frank Vitagliano moderates a candid conversation with Eric Nowak, President of Global ECS at Aero, Paul Bay, CEO of Ingram Micro, and Patrick Zammit, CEO of TD SYNNEX. Leaders whose companies collectively drive more than $120 billion in annual IT sales. They discuss how distribution has evolved into a platform-driven orchestrator of cloud and AI ecosystems, the impact of digital investments and automation, and how hyperscaler partnerships are shifting from perceived threats to powerful growth opportunities. How will accelerating AI adoption reshape the channel? And what does it mean for vendors and solution providers? Find out in this live episode of Beyond Distribution.
We're going to do this a little differently this year. In the past, it's really been all about me asking questions and kind of doing it that way. I think what we'll do is I'm going to start off with a question for each of our executives, and then we're going to kind of go into three areas that are obviously really important, and just try to have some dialogue, in the three areas. One is certainly AI and a lot of what's happening there. Second one is, the hyperscalers and the impact of the hyperscalers in the marketplace and the relationships that have been developed, right? And then the third, of course, is digital platforms, right? And so, those are kind of the real important themes. So let me start with a couple of general questions. And again, the format is jump in at any time and add whatever you want to some of the answers. But Patrick, let me start with you. We've talked about this before, but the complexity of the world you operate in continues to be challenging, right? We got global conflict, economic factors, all the things we've heard today, tariffs, regulatory shifts, et cetera. How do you factor all of these into how you build out your company's strategic plans, not just the short term, but also in the longer term? And how do you think about that?
So I would start by saying it's fun to be a CEO at the moment, in this poly-crisis environment. So obviously we have our strategic plan, we have our aspirations. Every morning, first thing I'm doing is looking at the news and finding out what is going to impact my business. And as we are global, basically I have every chance that something will happen and impact us. So the approach we've taken is as follows. So we have, let's take tariff. Big impact, big uncertainty for a period of time. We didn't know what would be the rate, when it's going to be introduced. So the first question we ask ourselves is, okay, how are we going to manage this period of uncertainty? And it always starts by a very close dialogue with our vendors, okay? Because they are obviously impacted the same way. And so we need to make sure we are very well aligned. And very rapidly, we have the same discussion with our customers to understand their pain points, because then we need to engineer a solution. So for example, for tariff, what we did is, again, in close coordination with our vendors, we put inventory in place. Okay. So that's more tactical. Then the second question very rapidly is, what's the impact on the strategic plan? Okay, is it something which is going to impact us for the long run? So typically here, one example, again, with tariff was we had to revisit some of our supply chains. So that's clearly having a strategic impact. Some of the events won't have an impact, okay? And so it depends. At the moment, we have this famous discussion on the memory, or what it means, and what it means for the demand. But in general, I would say, one of the roles of distribution in this supply chain is to absorb the shocks. Okay, so we are a shock absorber, and over the years, I think we've done a good job to learn how to do it. No panic. We don't panic. We just look at it. Okay, what are the implications? Close collaboration, corrective action plan if needed. And the second thing we've done, so we've become more resilient, but also more agile. And today, so basically, the strategy is the strategy. Transparently, every year we have to fine-tune a little bit the strategy on some of the events. Agentic AI obviously will have a big effect on our strategy. And then we continue to nurture the agility of the team so that we can react appropriately.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, you could use a couple of examples, but certainly during the pandemic situation, the collaboration between distribution and vendors worked, right? I mean, it worked in a really significant way until we hit some component shortages a little further down the line. But initially, a lot of that got mitigated through, I think the collaboration that you've had and obviously distribution has had with, years of experience, right, with vendors. The other thing I would point out to this crowd in the context of the folks that are up here and how they think about this and how they answer the questions is, one, these are 3 public companies, and 2, the combined revenue of these 3 companies is in the $120+ billion of revenue, global revenue. So, this is a big business, right? This is a very significant big business, and so you have to think about that. Eric, let me go to you. Clearly, by most accounts, the digital transformation's been going on for 20 years, right? And it seems like it'll go on a lot longer than maybe some of us will be here, probably at least one of us. But the distributors have become master orchestrators of the cloud, for sure, and other business critical innovations, including AI, hyperscaler services. So talk a little bit about the investments that distributors have been making in this space and how they further aid the suppliers and the customers.
As you said, a lot of things are changing in our industry with the technologies, many things. There is one thing that stays the same. This is our mission. It stays in the middle. And we stay in the middle between the channel partners and the vendors. And so the mission is unchanged. We need to continue to cover the market, specifically where the vendors cannot do it by themselves. We need to promote their technologies. We need to enable the channel. We need to make sure that basically transactions are frictionless, that we develop the business. And traditionally, we are doing this, investing in people. Now we continue to do this for the most part of our traditional business. We try to automate. We are using the platforms in the traditional business to make sure that basically more and more we are automating all the transactions and all the things. And on the other hand, we are investing, and all distributors are investing massively in their cloud and AI platform, because this play is a platform play. And it's not only an electronic commerce platform. The partners, we are there to make sure that partners can procure the cloud and AI services, but also deploy, manage, orchestrate, secure, report, invoice. And so this is a huge investment. And now this platform has to be AI enabled. And so this is where we put most of our investments, internal investments.
Yeah, and obviously, there's been significant ones prior to, and they're just continuing, and they'll continue as it evolves. So Paul, every year has its challenges. And here we are in mid-February, and they're starting to pop up a little bit, right? And 2026 will be no exception. So as you start thinking about, the rest of 2026 and beyond, what are you thinking about from a challenges standpoint and the things that you have to do, one, to manage it within your business, but also to help, to what Patrick said earlier, absorb a little bit of the risk and help your customers and your suppliers, deal with it?
Well, I think there's still a great opportunity in the channel. Whether we're going to have short term, and I'll talk about that here in a second, whether it's long term, there's always something every year. We just don't know what it's going to be next year where we sit today. So I think there's a ton of opportunity. I think what we saw this morning kind of validates our strategy for distribution in Ingram Micro, put the customer in the middle of everything we do. So you heard Dwayne, you heard Alan kind of talking about 2 different businesses of what's important to them. So really understanding what's important to them. I think services are still going to be, and that's a big kind of catch-all. Services opportunities for our partners. What are we doing around AI? And we'll talk, I'm sure, more about that. We've heard a lot about it, what we're doing and how we can help our vendor partners and our customers. Operational efficiencies is still core. You heard what's happening. How do we free up the human capital we have today, retrain, and make sure they're focused on our customers? And there's a number of different ways to do that. Cybersecurity, I think, is one that's kind of top of mind for everybody. Is going to continue to be an opportunity. And then I would say cloud. Cloud, you still saw, is going to be growth. Kind of Matt talked about kind of up and down, and people are always going to be moving without. As you look at kind of the kind of area that we're in now from a tactical perspective, I think the $100+ billion, probably closer to $150 billion, probably 200 with our other distribution counterparts in the room. That gives us global visibility of what's going on.
Yep.
So whether it was early days of cloud was going to disintermediate everybody, what was going to happen, we had to get out in front and invest in front of the curve of what was happening. And we have that ability to do that with distribution because of the size and scale that we have. So we can kind of look around the corner what's happening. So who knows what's going to happen, whether it was tariffs last year, the memory, the consumption of GPUs, that's going to happen. But I would say make sure that you stay focused on what's important to the customers and communicate more now than ever. That's the thing I think that we miss. I heard the CFO panel yesterday. I talked to a couple people in the hallway, and the challenges of really understanding all of the things we're doing to help your business. On average, our solutions have 6 different products on a global basis. That's a global number. You're one piece of that solution. So making sure we understand what your goals and objectives are, what markets you're trying to serve, and how do we tie that in, and then how we're balancing all the day-to-day macroeconomics, the shortages, the tariffs, the geopolitical, all the other things that are out there.
So you've just come immune to it. You're just rolling with the punches here, right?
Frank, you told everybody you've known everybody for 25 years. I think I've known you for close to 30.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wasn't 10 when you met me.
Yeah, I know you weren't. And you've aged to multiply that in the last couple of years. But okay, so I think that's a good way to look at it, right? Because there is a ton of opportunity. The one thing that strikes me as I listen to all the discussions over the last, yesterday and a little bit today is, I think the productivity enhancements that we're starting to see are understated, right? I think they're going to be more significant. And when you listen to some of what Dwayne and Alan talked about, and Bob and Dirk, that was compelling to me, that the productivity that we're getting. So I want to move over to platforms for a minute, because I think that's a key area that we need to talk about. So Patrick, obviously, you've been part of and your company's been part of the investment cycle for quite some time. How do you think about it in terms of the most compelling aspects of the outcomes, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So digitalization is probably by far the largest CapEx category for the company. Yep. And it's so important that it's now at the board level. I mean, we have a technology committee, and basically the board is reviewing what we are doing, platforms, AI, you name it, how much we're investing, are we investing enough, are we protecting the company properly, and so on. So it's absolutely a key topic. So for me, this digitalization opportunity is going to play in 2 directions. The first one is, through the platforms, through the integration with our customers and the vendors. I mean, we're going to be able to automate significantly more of, I would call it the low-value tasks, and improve the customer experience. And so what we've done at TD SYNNEX, I've created 2 groups. One really focused on the digitalization of our market engagement and how can we improve the value for our customers. Now AI and agentic AI are going to become new opportunities to achieve that. And then I have a second group really focused on our internal processes and how we are interacting again with our key stakeholders. So, the outcome of it, and again, I'm sure it's true for the whole distribution, is we need to continue to be easier to work with and remove non-value-added tasks, of course, internally, but also we heard our partners talking before, absolutely critical. Level of competition and pressure continues to increase. But also we can leverage this I mean, in particular, data lakes. I mean, it's true that we have unique data lakes to create more insights for both our customers and our vendors.
Yeah. Yeah. So to that point, Eric, how do you see it playing out over the next 3 to 5 years in terms of capabilities and advantages into the to the folks in this room?
On the platforms?
Yeah.
Well, I see there are two kinds of platforms. You have the product platforms, basically selling online with an electronic commerce platform, all the products we have in the catalog. And this is efficiency, productivity gains for everyone, the suppliers, the customers, and us. It has to become a kind of frictionless transaction line. And I believe that over time, in the next 3 to 5 years, most of the transactions in this region will go through this platform for the traditional platform. And then you have the cloud and AI platforms. And this is very different once again because these cloud and AI platforms are becoming a lifecycle management of the subscription. Cloud subscription, because we all have cloud products, and tomorrow AI subscription. So the ability that the partners, the customers, will have to manage the lifecycle of the subscription of their customers or themselves. Mm-hmm. And of course, it will have to be AI. It will have to be AI enabled, meaning that we already on our CE have agents and assistants. It will become even more solid. So basically, the partners will use the platforms to manage their cloud consumption with AI, so that basically they can increase their business.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting is sometimes we've made these major investments, and as I said at the beginning, you've made them in the context of still running a very complicated business that it requires a lot of certainly investment in general and expertise. But one of the things that's really important is once you put them in and once you make the investments, there's still a ton of work that needs to get done, right? And Paul, I know that you and I have talked about this a lot. One of the things that I know you do, and I'm sure Patrick and Eric and your organizations do, is get feedback right along the way from both your customers and your suppliers in terms of what are they seeing, what are they hearing, what other things need to be done. What's your sense, Paul, where we are in the journey, and what are some of the feedback that you're hearing and acting on?
So I think you heard some of the feedback from customers here today, and I'll give you a kind of a flavor of the journey we're on. But again, if you put the customer and what's important, Dwayne's still sitting here, so Dwayne up front, of what's important to him. So we define it as 3 things: speed, scale, and service. The first one is speed. And by the way, we look at time to value. Like, how are you getting your time to value? How does Dwayne free up time to go have a conversation with end user? These are the things that distribution has added value for a long time. I always say, for those of you that have worked in distribution or thought you wanted to work in distribution, when you get behind the curtain, it's completely different than what it looks like on the front end. So how do you take out the complexity and the friction of that? And that's really where we spend a lot of time, to things like order status and tracking, special pricing. You heard renewals being a key one. That adds value. It doesn't sound sexy, but it's super important to a business because we want to free up our time to go spend time with our customers' organization so they can spend time with the end user. So we spent a lot of time going through that, and first you got to get the data right. And so we talk about it in AI, and that was at the end of the day, if you don't have the right data, it doesn't matter where you put it into a data lake. We put it into a data mesh, which gives us a little bit more architecture and how we look at the data, and on a global basis, so you can respond more quickly to those tactical things. Again, the way technology is being consumed, those 6 different products and services that are being added in, could be a hyperscaler, could be cloud, it's devices at the end, at the edge. So bringing all that together, there's tons of complexity, and there's so many different ways to solve for it. And the second piece was, for us, was setting up really the models. So we have 400 different models that we talk about publicly, and training those models, and then ultimately, to what Eric says, then for us, we can get to we can process map to be able to drop in agentic AI. And so that goes back to the front of making it easier to do business with, because we want to free up that time. And so I think we're still fairly early days. You can see all the charts that we see here. It's moving very, very quickly. So how do we continue to retrain? And I don't know if Tiffany's still in here, because I was in that room when she stood up and told every person to fire their salespeople because they need business leaders from a cloud standpoint. The message, though, is we got to make sure we're retraining. So how do you take the people where we are today? You got to perform while you're transforming. A lot easier said than done. A lot of good buzzwords, but while you're performing and preparing for that transformation and moving the industry along to be able to support the technologies that are out there, that are here today and that are coming. So, you know, I don't know where we're going to be 3 to 5 years. It's going to be different than we were 2 years ago when you were up here asking me if hyperscalers were our friend or our foe, and here we are right in the middle of it.
That may be my next question, but before I get there, you read my notes? Is that before I get,
I'm old, I don't have my glasses on.
so you can use mine. Before I get there, you used to talk a lot about human putty.
Yes.
Right? And so I think what I'm getting from all of this is your platform is helping to eliminate the need for the human putty, right? Which is a big deal.
Proactive, or going from reactive activities to proactive. I mean, we all have, it's all relative in size, the size of your organization. We got to drive more productivity through that.
Yeah. So let me go to the hyperscalers for a minute, and let me, you know, since you brought it up, let me talk to you a little bit about it. Every year, and certainly since we've started having these discussions, the relationships have, you know, continued to evolve, right? And you know, it's no mystery. What, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was hyperscalers are going to disintermediate distribution. Another one of the things that was going to come along and disintermediate distribution, which is the most bizarre thing that a lot of us have heard in a long time, but that's another story. But I see the relationships evolving, and I see it benefiting, you know, all the folks in this room. So talk a little bit about that and how you view it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it was 3 years ago on this stage we were having this conversation. It was kind of early days. They're here. They're super important. They're investing in the channel and how to continue to deliver technology through the hyperscalers. I think the one thing I always continue to go back to, though, is if you look at the customer, they effectively are responsible, you're talking mid-market and below, they own the technology output of those small to medium-sized, mid-sized businesses they're servicing. They want to have that control and visibility. So when we look at the complexity that was being driven there, for us it was how do we make the connectivity into their marketplaces so they could be part of that solution. Everybody knows that there's commits that are being made from those end users to those hyperscalers. That's great, but we want to make sure our solution providers are able to still service the entire piece of it and not lose that visibility. I would also say there's still a big opportunity for training and how we educate. That's one of the things this industry still has is a knowledge base we need to continue to enhance, and all of us can continue to make those investments around all of your technologies here in the room. And how do we do that? And the hyperscalers being one of those, because it is a complex kind of output that they're there, and there's an opportunity for us to continue to certify and train up as we continue to move forward. So I mean, they're a very important piece of it. We look at it, we got to have the right people, you got to have the right platform, and ultimately you're going to give the right output and productivity at the other end.
Yeah. So Patrick, when you think about it, obviously I know that your company has announced a number of different programs, right? A number of different engagement processes, whether it's training, whether it's enablement, et cetera. Share a little bit of that, a little bit of your thinking around that with us.
Yes. So again, for us, the hyperscalers, same thing, strategic partners. First, as a provider of, critical solution when it comes to hybrid cloud, but also for AI. They are clearly at the forefront of the AI revolution, so creating a lot of opportunities for us to bring solutions to the market. The second thing, maybe insisting a little bit on the hyperscaler marketplace, the famous disintermediation risk. In reality, so this has become a clear new go-to-market for us. When you speak about some of the changes which impacted strategy, that was one of them for us. So now we've put it as, okay, it's a new go-to-market, we need to embrace it. There was a risk of disintermediation, absolutely. You have all those credits sitting at the hyperscalers, the CFO of the end users are telling their CIOs you need to consume it. So, but in reality, what we've done, I think, collectively, so I'm talking distribution, plus the software vendors in particular, plus the hyperscalers, is to develop this private offering solution so that, basically, if the end user decides to go through a marketplace, still the channel is being rewarded. And that's super important because if our customers don't get rewarded, then they are not going to push for the technology. So that was very important. And then the last element for us is we have a contract manufacturing activity. And so, today we are basically producing networking solutions, compute solutions for the hyperscalers. So in our case, it's a very good business. It's growing extremely fast. Very important. But again, I think the key takeaway is what could have been a threat has become a very nice opportunity.
Yeah, it really has evolved. But to that point, Eric, as you look at maybe some things that could continue to be improved in that area, whether it's engagement, whether it's, training, whether it's, Patrick mentioned the credit situation. We hear that all the time. What are some of the things that you'd like to see changed?
We have made a lot of progress. So we collectively have made a lot of progress with the hyperscalers. There are clearly two kinds of hyperscalers. You have Microsoft, that is by design a two-tier model for 30 years or more. And so their platform also were designed from the start in a two-tier model. And then you have the other ones that were not designed at the beginning as a two-tier model. And so they are making a lot of progress, a lot of efforts to integrate the channel into their world. Once again, all of us are now working with these guys the way Paul and Patrick just explained. I believe if this would even more simple, if this would even more clear in terms of engagement, what is direct for these guys, what they want to do, it would be better. If they could continue to protect and increase the margin, because sometimes for the channel it's a bit light, it will be better. It's just a question of, I believe it's a question of time. It's new for them.
Yeah.
We are working together. We need to simplify, we need to scale, we need to make sure the margins and the partners are protected for their customers and so on.
Yeah, I think it's a good point about the differentiation between Microsoft and the others who've been in the channel for a long period of time, and the other two are new. The one thing that I've always thought about when we've had the conversation is that at the end of the day, you do have to remember that hyperscalers are a vendor. and as part of the go-to-market strategy, we all know that all vendors have a hybrid go-to-market strategy, and a portion of that is going to be direct. And so therefore, that will always be out there. And that was one of the reasons when I would have the disintermediation discussion with people, my view was I don't see it as a threat, because I think the people in this room realize that there are tons of advantages, but at the end of the day, it is a vendor, and they have a hybrid go-to-market strategy that could include customers that today are selling through solution providers and through vendors direct. So I think that consideration is there. I also think that what I've seen is they've done a reasonably good job of taking some folks that have channel experience. I think JJ's still in the room here. Yeah, he's over there, and he spent some time with AWS. And people like that help the process because they were able to, help, the AWSs, the GPSs of the world, Google of the world, think about the channel and understand that a little better, which for those of us in the room, seems pretty obvious, but to a lot of people that haven't spent 30 years in it, it's not as obvious.
Just one addition here. So when you think about distribution, when you have a technology which becomes mainstream, at the beginning it's more direct business, but then very rapidly comes the question of scaling. And so if you want to reach out to, millions of end users, thousands of partners, customers, very rapidly distribution becomes a good partner, because when you think about it, we are very effective and cheap go-to-market, and we know how to scale very rapidly. So I think what we are seeing with, again, so Microsoft had the history, but AWS or Google Cloud, they are seeing that there's a need, as soon as they need to scale at a competitive price, distribution becomes an interesting partner. There's a very interesting analysis. When you look at the weight of the channel by technology, you see that, in general, the more the technology matures, the more important the role of the channel and distribution becomes. And so, I mean, all those innovations, latest innovations, obviously the role of the channel for the moment is, I mean, below the average, but slowly but surely we see the vendors leveraging our expertise.
Yeah, well, there's no question. Well, let me shift over to AI now. We've got about another 10 or 15 minutes to talk about AI and Eric, clearly, all the distributors are in the process now of accelerating, the AI into the ecosystem, right? And that's important. Some of the stuff that we've heard today about agents and how quickly that's going to happen is interesting. It's also a little bit scary, to be honest, but another conversation. But from a data readiness standpoint and a workflow standpoint, and the growing demand for that, how are you viewing that at Arrow? And how are you looking at it?
I believe there are several ways where distribution can play in this AI world. First, before to talk about AI solutions, you need to prepare your infrastructure. Right? You need to prepare your data, you need to store your data, you need to secure your data, you need to secure the network. And so adapt your network, more compute, more storage. And so this is a traditional play for the channel and distribution. Of course, our suppliers come with some AI capabilities on their hardware and software infrastructure solution, but that's still a very traditional play. So that's the first one, and this is where we are today and where we see the growth at the moment in the infrastructure business. Then all the distributors are creating their AI portfolio. Same as we had to create a cloud portfolio, now we are creating an AI portfolio with our legacy vendors that are all providing their own solutions. The hyperscalers, Patrick mentioned it a minute ago, but also the new players, the guys that come. So preparing this. Then on our platforms, we are, let's say, introducing agents, assistants, so AI capabilities so that the partners don't have to do it by themselves. They cannot scale. And so on our platforms now, you have AI capabilities for some vendors. Going forward, of course, it will be for all the vendors. We need to enable the channel on AI. So same, a lot of training, a lot of consulting, a lot of professional services, managed services that we add on the platform so that the partners can also complete their solutions. And maybe not all distributors, but we are also selling our platform as a service in terms of cloud AI management capabilities to other distributors, telcos, partners, whatsoever.
Yeah, when you think about it, Paul, I'll ask this of you. When you think about it, and when Tiffany was up earlier, she talked about it, and there's massive investments that are going to have to be made at the solution provider level for sure, right? And so as you think about it from your customers, you've got to help figure out how to help that, right? And as any transition that you've been involved in, a distribution's been involved in, the role falls on you in a lot of cases to help mitigate that expense and have that ROI happen a little bit sooner. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so again, separating kind of how we use AI, which I talked about, which helps us understand and help our partners how they can sell AI and deploy it. So I think we all have programs that are programs on how you understand, how you sell, and how you deliver AI, and then hopefully at scale. And so for us, it's kind of that initial phase and watching people come through the front door of the educational process, but ultimately you want to get to that outcome. Yes. And so we're encouraged by it because a year ago we would have had this conversation because we were going through using our AI as opposed to helping kind of deploy it into the channels we serve. We're seeing more and more people go through that phase. So it's encouraging, meaning when it starts going from the compute layer down to the application layer can be more consumed now for our customers to be able to deliver it to those end users. So kind of that first phase of really understanding, by the time you get to the outcome phase, you're right, the solution providers have to make some financial decisions and commitments that they're going to be able to go do. Again, the good thing is we're seeing people companies go from phase 1 to phase 2 and getting to that phase 3. I think it's important for the vendors in the room too, is to make sure, how do you plug into that? Because I think the ISV and kind of the surrounding technologies through from an AI perspective are important. So what's your channel strategy as it relates to that and making sure you're plugging in to your distribution partners on your strategy around that to make sure we're aligned together. So when we go out and have a conversation with our customers as they're going through, again, understanding, selling, and actually delivering, it'll be super important. So that would be my ask of the room, is make sure you're bringing your teams in that are responsible for that, for us to really understand and how you play in kind of that broader ecosystem with the ISVs and the traditional ones we all know that are deploying that.
Yeah, good. And Patrick, I guess the final question regarding the AI piece would be, there's a human element to this, right? And there's we got the technology piece of it, but you got to combine it with the human element, both internally, right, as you think about how you're deploying it within your company, but also externally as you're working with your customers and also the suppliers here. What are you seeing there as it relates to how that's playing out, and what advice would you have for folks as they look at it?
So I'm going to start on the external view. So we have our enablement program, Destination AI. Started very early when we saw the opportunity coming. It was, how do you want to approach that market? The good news is very rapidly we moved from LLM, which was difficult to monetize, to now use cases which are more specific. So now we have 3 programs, one on how to build an AI factory, one on agentic AI, and one on how to secure AI in the company. And so here, very clearly, it's all about the enablement, and it's all about having the right resources to not only train, but even support our partners as they have to go to the end customers. Convince the end customer on the use case. We've developed a whole methodology which they can use when they go to the end customer to identify the use cases and help them close the opportunity. So that's on the customer-facing side. Internally, we are calling it becoming AI fluent. And so basically we have 2 main activities. The first one is we want our coworkers to feel confident using the technology. It's about the adoption. If you scare the coworkers by telling them, okay, your job is going to disappear, it's going to be very difficult. We believe that AI has to work with the team and not, replace it. So a lot of education internally so that they get more comfortable, education, and empowering them to try the system. So we've created a safe environment so that they can try creating agents, you name it. So that they can become more fluent with the technology. And the second initiative is we've identified a series of use cases where we think it's going to have a big impact and fast on our processes. And we're going to then combine the technology with a team who is comfortable with the technology to reinvent our processes.
That's great. Well, look, I want to thank the 3 of you, not only for your participation in this event and for what you do, what you've done here today, but also for what you do in general, for the industry. Because I don't think, to be honest, and I've said this a lot of times, and people are tired of hearing it from me, but I think a lot of what distribution does gets taken for granted in the marketplace. And I don't think people really understand how complicated it is just to run the base business that you're running, that's been going on for a lot of years, but also to do that now in the context of all these significant investments that need to get made and the technological changes that we're seeing so quickly and so significant. So I want to thank you for that. Any final comments? Any final
No, I think just one thing that I heard kind of through the hallways, I think it came up, which is about the data, right? We've talked about the data, and I think some of the vendor partners were saying access to the data, like lean into us. We have the data. The distributors have the data. Let's make sure we're equipping you and your organizations with the right information, because we know you guys are all friends in the room. We got to work collectively to how we move upstream within your organizations to understand back to kind of that value. So I know there was a lot of conversations about value, or excuse me, about the data. Let's make sure, because we have access to the data, to be able to provide that to all of you to be more successful as a collective community.
Yep. Eric, any other final thoughts?
Yeah, on this AI thing and the role of distribution, there was another role that distribution had or is still having to today was just training, hiring young people, training these guys, growing these guys, and then one day they go to the vendors, the partners, whatsoever. And that's all in this way. We have low margins. We need a lot of people. Some of our tasks are basically very administrative or very transactional, so it can be this way. With AI, it will become more and more difficult. If I take the development, for example, let's say when we are developing our Sphere platform, we were hiring every year young people, and basically they were doing the simple job, and then the other ones are growing and they can do. Well, we don't need this anymore. The AI is today doing the simple job, and our people are becoming the ones that are tuning, and so this will, I believe, create another issue in the talent going forward, because basically it will become more and more difficult to integrate the young people in our industry.
Oh, that's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah, for me is, so I'm not 10 years in this industry, IT distribution, and indeed when I compare where we were 10 years ago and how a distributor looks like today, it's a major change. And the reason for we've been able to change is obviously we had in our cultures, in our values, I mean, being open-minded, I mean, open for change and innovation. But it happened really because we could partner with our vendors in particular, who told us, okay, guys, you want to stay relevant for the future? That's what is required. And we had tough conversation. It was not comfortable in some cases. I mean, again, I had some very large vendors telling me, we think distribution has no future. But, I mean, 10 years later, obviously it's not the case. The vendors who told me that are very happy with us, so that's good news. But it's because they challenged us. They were clear on their roadmap, what technologies they wanted to bring to market, what would be the expectations. But we've been able to adjust our model all the time and stay relevant in the market. And so for me, the ask is continue to challenge us. I mean, it's super important. Again, it's not comfortable, but that enables us to adjust and continue to deliver the right value for, I mean, we have two customers, the vendor, and very important, our customers.
Yeah, great. All right, well, thank you. Appreciate your time.